What if one message, just one echo from the past, could totally change your life right now? Imagine a voice cutting through all the chaos of our world, delivering a truth so profound, so direct, that it's like a key, unlocking a version of yourself you've always wanted to be. We're not just talking about some quick motivational quote. This is about deep, resonant wisdom that people right now are saying has completely turned their lives around. Today, we're looking at something pretty amazing. A powerful Billy Graham message, finding new life as a podcast. Some are even calling it a lost sermon because of how it's being rediscovered and helping people transform. Stick around, because what you're about to hear could be exactly what you've been looking for. For decades, Billy Graham's voice filled stadiums and reached millions on the air, talking about faith, hope, and changing lives. He lived from 1918 to 2018, and he wasn't just a preacher, he was a global figure. Think about it. He reached an estimated 210 million people in over 185 countries. His crusades were huge events. Leaders wanted his advice, and his message about starting fresh through faith touched people everywhere. So what happens when a legacy that huge meets the super personal listen anytime world of today? Well, it connects in a whole new way. Graham wasn't around to make podcasts, obviously, but his timeless sermons, those powerful calls to live differently, they're getting a brand new audience through podcasts. The Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and other platforms are making sure his voice isn't just history, but something that inspires people today. And here's the thing. Some of these sermons, when you hear them now, maybe on your headphones, are having a massive impact. We're gonna dig into one of those messages, one that people are saying is literally life-changing. It's like finding a hidden treasure map. Not lost like it was physically missing, but lost to many, only to be powerfully rediscovered. This isn't just a history lesson. We want to know how one piece of wisdom, spoken with Graham's famous clarity and passion, can cut through all our modern confusion and really change someone. Why this message? Why is it hitting home now? What's the secret sauce? Building intrigue. The lost gem listener claims. There's something exciting about a rediscovered truth, right? We're bombarded with new advice constantly, but the idea of a lost sermon, maybe one that was overlooked or didn't quite hit the same way back then, but now feels incredibly relevant, that's got a special pull. And we're not talking about some old dusty book found in the attic. We're talking about a specific focus in a sermon that, when you hear it as a podcast, is just blowing listeners away. We started hearing whispers, then more and more people talking about stumbling onto these recordings. They're saying things like, I've heard Billy Graham before, but this was different. Or, it felt like he was talking right to me about my situation today. That's what grabbed our attention. So many people sharing stories of how these old recordings in this new format deeply changed them. Why would a sermon, maybe decades old, hit so hard now? Maybe it's because podcasts are so personal. It's not a stadium. It's often just you and the voice. Graham's voice, known for being so sincere, comes through without distractions. Or maybe it's because the struggles he talked about, purpose, fear, hope, meaning those are timeless, aren't they? Graham had a way of talking about these big human questions with simple, direct faith. This lost gem idea also makes you think that sometimes the biggest truths aren't complicated, but you need to be ready, maybe in a quiet moment, to really hear them. In our crazy, busy lives, the focused attention a podcast allows might be just what's needed for Graham's message to sink in deeper than before. It's like these sermons were waiting for this very moment, this medium, to have an even bigger impact. People aren't just feeling motivated for a bit. They're talking about real shifts in how they think, their habits, their relationships, their whole outlook. They say it's like finding a key, one insight that changes everything else. This is more than just liking a good speech. It's an encounter that can genuinely redirect your life. And that's what we're looking into. What makes such a powerful encounter happen? Sparked by a voice from the past through today's tech. Section 1. The context of Billy Graham's enduring impact. To really get why a single Billy Graham message on a podcast can be so life-changing, we need to look at what made his ministry and his way of speaking so special. It wasn't just about being a great speaker. It was about really connecting with people and having this unshakable belief in his core message. One thing that really stood out about Billy Graham's preaching was how simple and direct he was. In a world that often thinks complicated means deep, Graham did the opposite. He broke down the Christian message of hope and transformation into clear, easy to understand terms. He wasn't trying to show off with fancy theology. He was trying to reach people's hearts. He believed the most important truths could be understood by anyone. And that clarity, it's incredibly powerful. When a message is straightforward, its truth hits harder and it's easier to take it in and do something about it. People weren't left scratching their heads. They were given a clear invitation to think about a different way. Plus, Graham often shared his own story of faith in his messages. He talked openly about his own commitment and how it changed him, which made him so authentic and relatable. He wasn't talking down to people. He was sharing something that had deeply changed his own life. That kind of vulnerability builds trust. When you feel a speaker truly lives what they preach, their words carry so much more weight. A really key part of Graham's lasting appeal was how he always focused on unity and hope. Even when the world was pretty divided, his messages often rose above all the politics and different church groups. He zeroed in on what we all share, the need for forgiveness, for purpose, for a hope that lasts. He was known for being humble and empathetic, and that let him connect with everyone. That focus on what brings us together instead of what tears us apart is maybe even more important today, isn't it? In a world that feels so broken, a message of hope that speaks to all of us can be incredibly healing and inspiring. Billy Graham was also way ahead of his time in using mass media. Long before podcasts or the internet, he knew radio and TV could reach millions who'd never step into a church or a crusade. His Hour of Decision radio show started way back in 1950. And he televised his crusades for decades. That willingness to use new tech to spread his message is exactly why his stuff works so well on podcasts now. He wasn't scared of new platforms. He saw them as new ways to offer hope. His crusades weren't just services. They were these big, inspiring events with music, personal stories, and Graham's powerful calls to change your life for the better. The whole atmosphere was buzzing with the idea that transformation could happen. So when we talk about a Billy Graham podcast changing lives, it's building on this legacy of clear, heartfelt communication, realness, a message of hope for everyone, and a smart way of using media to touch individual lives. That's why his words, even all these years later, are still so powerful and can spark such a big response when you hear them fresh. Section 2. Unveiling the life-changing message, the core tenets. So, what is it about the actual content of certain Billy Graham sermons now hitting so hard on podcasts that people are calling life-altering? We can't point to one specific lost sermon with a magic title everyone agrees on, but we can look at the powerful themes that keep showing up in Graham's messages, themes that consistently lead to these deep personal changes. The Lost Gem isn't necessarily one forgotten script, but more like rediscovering the amazing impact of his core teachings when they really connect with what you need and long for right now. Listeners are finding this mix of timeless ideas that, when you really absorb them in the focused way a podcast allows, becomes a powerful spark for change. One of the biggest themes is definitely unshakable hope when times are tough. Billy Graham preached during wars, huge societal changes, and a lot of anxiety. He never sugarcoated suffering or fear, but he always pointed to a faith that could give stability and a hope that lasts, no matter what's going on. Imagine hearing that today, with all our own global worries, personal anxieties, and the constant stream of bad news. A message that offers not just easy answers, but deep, anchored hope. That can feel like a lifeline. It's not just wishful thinking. He presented it as a solid confidence in something bigger than yourself, something that can get you through life's storms. Listeners say this perspective alone can change their whole outlook, moving them from being scared and reactive to feeling grounded and sure. Flowing right from that is Graham's powerful focus on personal responsibility and the real chance for radical change. He always challenged people to own their lives, their choices, and their spiritual path. But here's the kicker. That challenge always came with this huge sense of possibility, the deep belief that no one is a lost cause, no situation is too hopeless for a complete turnaround. His messages often revolved around the idea of a new beginning, a fresh start available to anyone no matter their past. That's incredibly empowering, isn't it? When life can feel like it's already decided for you, or when you feel trapped by mistakes, hearing a clear, strong voice say that massive, positive change isn't just possible but expected if you make a commitment, that can smash those limiting beliefs. People describe it as an awakening, where the weight of past failures just lifts, replaced by the exciting idea of a transformed future they can actually help create. Another key idea listeners are finding so transformative is discovering real and lasting purpose. So many of us today feel a bit lost, like our lives don't have much meaning beyond the day-to-day grind. Graham's messages always pointed to a purpose found in a relationship with God and in living for something bigger than yourself. He spoke to that universal human desire for significance, for a life that matters. This isn't just about finding a new hobby or job, though that might happen. It's about a total shift in what your life is centered around, a spiritual purpose. When that connection happens, people say their priorities change. The mad dash for things that don't last fades, and a more centered, intentional way of living takes over. There's a deep peace that comes from knowing your place in a bigger story, and that's a constant theme in the feedback from people touched by these podcasted sermons. Graham also had an amazing way of addressing universal human needs with incredible empathy. His messages, while based in Christian belief, often touched on the core worries, desires, and screw-ups common to all of us: loneliness, guilt, fear of death, wanting love and acceptance. He didn't so much condemn as he invited. That empathetic style, along with his directness, created a space where people felt understood, not judged, which made them way more open to the call for change. In a podcast, that empathy can feel incredibly personal. Like Graham himself is right there with you, acknowledging your struggles and offering a way through. Feeling seen and understood is often the first step to opening up to a message that can change you. Finally, the idea of grace and forgiveness as Graham presented it is without a doubt a huge part of the life-changing impact people talk about. The thought that you can be fully known, flaws and all, and still be offered unconditional love and complete forgiveness, that's a radically different message from what we usually hear. It frees people from the crushing weight of guilt and shame, empowering them to move on. For many, this is the turning point, realizing they don't have to earn their way to peace or acceptance, but that it's freely given. This unleashes so much emotional and spiritual energy, which can then be poured into positive change and growth. So, when we talk about the One Billy Graham podcast that will change your life forever, we're really talking about an encounter with these powerful, timeless truths. It's that mix of hope, responsibility, purpose, empathy, and grace, delivered with Graham's unique sincerity that opens the door to deep personal transformation for so many rediscovering his voice today. Section 3, the transformation journey, how this message sparks change. It's one thing to break down the key ideas in a powerful message, But how does that message, when you hear it on a podcast, actually kickstart a journey of real personal change? People aren't just talking about feeling good for a minute. They're talking about deep, lasting shifts. Let's look at how a Billy Graham sermon, maybe heard on your commute, during a walk, or just quietly at home, can become such a major turning point. Often it starts with a major shift in how you see things. Billy Graham had this amazing skill for reframing life's biggest questions and problems through a spiritual lens. Listening to his clear, confident explanations of timeless truths can make it feel like blinders are coming off. Suddenly, problems that felt overwhelming might seem manageable when you look at them from a different angle. A life that felt messy might start to show some underlying order, or at least the potential for it. This isn't just new information. It's a whole new way of seeing yourself, others, your past, and your future. People talk about these aha moments where confusion they've had for ages just disappears, replaced by a new understanding that changes how they see their whole reality. This shift in perspective almost always leads to a renewed and often redirected sense of purpose. As we've said, Graham's messages constantly point to a life with meaning rooted in something bigger than just your own ambitions or what you can buy. When that clicks, it's not a small tweak. It's a reshuffling of your life's priorities. The things that used to seem so important might not matter as much, while a desire for a deeper spiritual connection, for helping others, for living a life that lines up with your core values, moves to the front. That's where real transformation starts to take shape. When you find a strong why, you can handle almost any how. This new purpose becomes like an inner compass, guiding your decisions and actions in a way that fleeting motivations just can't. Crucially, Graham's messages, while deeply spiritual, often hinted at or straight up suggested practical steps for change. The call for a new beginning wasn't just a nice idea, it was an invitation to make real decisions, a decision to forgive, to change bad habits, to focus on spiritual growth, to invest in relationships differently. The personal nature of a podcast can make these calls to action feel incredibly direct. Unlike being in a huge crowd, you feel like he's talking just to you, making it harder to ignore the challenge. The message isn't just heard, it's felt like a personal call. This often turns into real changes in behavior. How you spend your time, where your money goes, how you treat people, and how you face your own struggles. The way podcasts work, personal and easy to listen to again and again, also plays a big part. You can go back to a message that really hit you multiple times, letting its truths sink in deeper each time. Repetition is huge for learning and internalizing new beliefs and habits. What might have been a quick thought during a one-time sermon in a big place can become a deeply held belief when you revisit it several times in your own focused space. The message goes from being outside information to an inner guiding principle. This ongoing exposure, thanks to the podcast format, lets you really soak in the message, creating a deeper, more lasting impact than just hearing it once. What's more, these messages often trigger an emotional and spiritual release. Graham's empathetic style, combined with how he directly addressed things like sin, repentance, and grace, can unlock buried emotions and create space for real healing. Listeners talk about feeling a weight lifted, experiencing forgiveness for past wrongs, both things they did and things done to them, and finding a new peace that's hard to explain. This emotional release is often a must-have for deep change. When your heart is softened and healed, your mind becomes more open, and your will gets stronger to try a new path. Finally, all these listener claims create a kind of positive feedback loop of social proof and encouragement. When people hear that others have had these huge transformations through these messages, it builds their own belief that such change is possible for them too. And as they start their own journey and see positive shifts, they often want to share their story, which inspires even more people. This creates a ripple effect where the message's power to transform is amplified through shared experiences. That lost sermon becomes a living story, passed from one changed life to another. So, the transformation journey sparked by a Billy Graham podcast is a complex process. It involves shifts in thinking, a reordering of purpose, practical changes in behavior, the benefit of hearing the message personally and repeatedly, emotional healing, and the encouragement from a community of listeners. It's a whole person change, mind, heart, and actions, showing the lasting power of clear, compassionate, and challenging truth to reshape a life from the inside out. If what you've heard today strikes a chord, if you're looking for deeper meaning or real transformation in your own life, then the next step is simple, but it could be huge. Don't just take my word for how powerful these messages can be. Experience it for yourself. Open up your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever you use, and search for Billy Graham Sermons or Billy Graham Podcast. You'll find stuff from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and others, making his huge library of messages super easy to find. As you look through them, keep an eye out for titles or descriptions that touch on the themes we've talked about: hope in tough times, finding purpose, overcoming personal struggles, or the promise of a fresh start. Don't overthink it. Just go with your gut and pick a message that feels relevant to where you are right now. Then, just listen. Listen with an open heart and an open mind. Try to listen without distractions, really letting the words sink in. You might be amazed by what you discover, by how this timeless wisdom speaks directly to what you're going through today. And once you've listened, I'd love for you to get involved. If you've heard a Billy Graham message in the past that really impacted you, share it in the comments below. What was it about that message that stuck with you? Or, if you listen to one after this, come back and share your biggest takeaway. Your story could be the very thing someone else needs to start their own journey of discovery. And finally, if you're into exploring more powerful, life-changing messages and the kind of wisdom that can help us make sense of our complicated world, please think about subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with someone you think might get something out of it. The amazing thing is that a voice from the past, boosted by today's technology, really can spark life-altering change. Billy Graham's legacy isn't just in the history books about his crusades or the millions he spoke to in person. It's alive and well in these easy-to-access podcast messages, still offering hope, challenge, and the unshakable promise of personal transformation. That one Billy Graham podcast that will change your life forever, it isn't necessarily a single specific episode meant for everyone. It's more about that unique moment you might have with his timeless wisdom. That specific message that finds you at just the right time, speaks straight to your heart, and opens a door to real growth. The chance for that kind of transformation isn't a fairy tale. It's something listeners are experiencing right now. The invitation is out there, the messages are ready. The journey to a changed life, a life with deeper purpose and fresh hope, can start with something as simple as hitting play. So, embrace the discovery, listen with an open heart, and may you find the wisdom that speaks most powerfully to you, guiding you toward the incredible personal transformation you're looking for.